Gay people shouldn't adopt kids. Okay, tell straight people to stop abandoning them.
Okay, a lot to unpack here, and I'm gonna try to do it without starting a civil war in the comment section. First of all, I don't think adoption agencies discriminate hard enough. Now, I'm not talking about sexual orientation or race or marital status. I think adoption agencies should discriminate though. If there are millions of people waiting in line for each adoptable infant, I mean, literally for every infant that becomes available for adoption, there are on average 45 couples waiting to adopt that infant. We can get that line of people waiting down from 1 million, 2 million to, I don't know, a couple 100,000 maybe. If adoption is supposed to give adopted people the best possible lives they can experience, the qualifications for adoption shouldn't just be, hey, I'm rich enough to stand in line. And yes, gay people, black people, single people who have historically been discriminated against by adoption agencies should be allowed to stand in that line if they would make better caretakers than other people. Okay, now we need to talk about why children actually become adoptable, because newsflash, it's not straight people are abandoning their children left and right. For every infant that gets adopted in the US, adoption agencies will spend on average $10,000 to $20,000 of hopeful adopters' money on advertising. There is a massive baby shortage in the US, and these millions of dollars being spent on advertising are being spent trying to convince pregnant people to relinquish their children for adoption, because ultimately there aren't enough people, quote unquote, abandoning their children like this guy's saying. Not to mention that the number one reason why families relinquish their infants for adoption in the US has to do with finances, and the number one reason why children in this country end up in the foster care system has to do with neglect. Critics of the US child welfare system will be very quick to point out that neglect and poverty seem to have a lot in common. 3/4 of reports to CPS involve allegations of neglect. Neglect happens when a parent or caregiver does not provide food, clothing, shelter, medical care, or supervision to the degree that the child's health, safety, and well-being are threatened with harm. And like, yeah, if you can't afford food or clothing or housing or daycare, how are you going to not be guilty of this definition of neglect? And I hope you can tell where we're going by now, because adoption doesn't solve these problems. Adoption positions itself as a system of child welfare, when in reality, adoption looks at families who are poor or struggling, and instead of helping those families address their needs, extracts their children and says, here you go, we're solving your problems for you. So to bring it full circle, the argument shouldn't be that gay people shouldn't adopt. The argument should be that no one should adopt. Adoption doesn't help anyone except the wealthy people who want to extract children from poor families. Adoption is America's cop-out, our reason for not providing social safety nets for families who need them. I don't know how any American progressive who considers themselves anti-colonialism can look at adoption and say that's something they want to do, when adoption is a hallmark example of exactly what colonialism looks like.